For years, limited access to capital has been viewed as the primary barrier preventing MSMEs from achieving Naik Kelas.
However, as Indonesia's largest microfinance institution, biggest challenge today is no longer simply to expand financing, but to ensure that every micro, small, medium enterprise receive the right level of support despite limited frontline capacity.
Therefore, we propose the Capability-Based Resource Allocation Framework, or CBRAF, a decision framework that allocates monthly based on regional capability and MSME maturity, enabling BRI to accelerate MSME Naik Kelas while maximizing both commercial performance and development impact.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the MSME strategy paradox, move into redefining the primary bottleneck, unpack the CBRAF solution, check out the regional capability index, and wrap up with the 3-year implementation and impact. Let's get right into it. Part 1. The MSME strategy paradox. A growing portfolio, but a shrinking reach. To really grasp the scale of the challenge here, let's look at the 2027 corporate planning dilemma facing BRI right now. This quote from Arini Widias-Suti, who is the VP of BRI's Microbusiness Development Division, hits the nail on the head. She's dealing with what is essentially a trilemma. The bank is constantly juggling 3 competing priorities: maintaining killer commercial performance, building up the capacity of these MSMEs, which they call helping businesses Naik Kelas or graduate to the next level, and fulfilling a massive financial inclusion mandate. And the real kicker, they have to pull all of this off using the exact same frontline workforce. Now, this tension creates a pretty stark paradox. On one side of the coin, you have absolutely incredible commercial success. BRI's overall loan portfolio grew by 5.3% year over year, hitting a staggering 705.1 trillion rupiahs. It's a super healthy growing loan book driven by smart, selective lending. But on the other side of the coin, the combined ultra-micro and micro borrower base actually shrank by 4.1%, dropping to 34.2 million customers. Think of it like this. The financial portfolio is growing beautifully, but the actual tangible reach down to the borrowers is shrinking. Sure, the bank is doing great commercially, but its developmental reach is slipping. Fewer early-stage entrepreneurs are getting that sustained, hands-on support they desperately need to survive. It's a huge wake-up call that financial growth alone doesn't automatically mean you're making developmental progress. Which leads us to part 2, redefining the primary bottleneck. Shifting from capital to capacity. This brings us to a massive paradigm shift. For a long time, everyone just assumed that a lack of capital was the main barrier in economic development. But that is simply not the case here. The most critical number to look at right now is 27,400. That's the projected number of frontline workers who are known at BRI as Mantri for the year 2025. And what's wild is that this number is actually down from over 31,000 back in 2022. So the real bottleneck holding back MSME growth, it isn't a lack of cash or financing programs, it's human capacity. Because of that drop in headcount, each one of those Mantris is now responsible for roughly 1,250 borrowers. Just let that sink in for a second. 1,250 clients. These frontline workers are supposed to handle lending, mentoring, digital adoption, and financial inclusion. With that kind of caseload, there is literally no physical way they have the time to sit down and provide the trust-based, hands-on coaching that early-stage businesses need to grow. The entire system is fundamentally bottlenecked by human bandwidth. So, how do they fix it? That brings us to part 3, the CBRF solution explained, and how they're shifting the paradigm. Realistically, BRI can't just hire its way out of this mess, and inventing another loan program won't fix a human bandwidth issue. They need a fundamentally smarter way to work with the people they already have. Enter the Capability-Based Resource Allocation Framework, or CBRAF. Now, it's really important to know what this is not. It's not just another empowerment initiative. It is a highly strategic decision engine. It's a framework built to deploy their existing human resources exactly where they're going to generate the absolute most impact, perfectly matching the intensity of the intervention with what different MSMEs actually need. This whole framework maps out 3 vital decisions. First, where should the frontline capacity actually go? Second, what specific interventions do those areas need? And third, which ecosystem partners can we tag in to help? So instead of a exhausting one-size-fits-all approach where every Mantri tries to do everything everywhere, CBRAF brings a surgical precision to how they allocate their people. To pull this off, they are essentially splitting the workforce into two highly specialized roles. On one side, you have development-focused Mantri. These folks are deployed in lower capability regions, where the businesses really need high-touch advisory, financial literacy, and basic foundational coaching. On the flip side, you have growth-focused Mantri. They operate in mature markets, laser-focused on business expansion, market linkage, and complex digital transitions. And to make sure the Mantri actually have time for this high-value coaching, all the routine day-to-day transactions get smartly offloaded to digital platforms like BRIGAMA and local BRL Link agents. Which naturally leads us to part 4, the Regional Capability Index, and figuring out exactly where to start. To figure out who goes where across a massive, diverse geography like Indonesia, BRI uses this Regional Capability Index. Think of it as a strategic compass. It pulls in real-world data, things like a region's digital readiness, accounting education, and market concentration, and it drops provinces into low, medium, or high capability buckets. If a province flags as low capability, the system automatically assigns development-focused Mantri there to build up the basics. If it flags as high capability, they send in the growth-focused Mantri. It guarantees that the bank's support perfectly matches the reality on the ground, cutting out wasted effort and maximizing real-world impact. Finally, let's jump into part 5, the 3-year implementation and impact, taking all of this from theory into reality. This all sounds fantastic in theory, right? But how do you actually execute an operational overhaul of this size? Well, BRIA has mapped out a really deliberate, escalating 3-year timeline. They aren't just flipping a switch and going nationwide on day 1. In year 1, they're piloting CBRAF in 4 very specific, lower capability provinces: NTT, NTB, Maluku, and North Maluku. Year 2 is all about evaluating that pilot data and expanding into similar transitioning areas. Then, by year 3, once they've completely perfected the playbook, the framework scales nationally. At that point, mature regions like Java will fully shift over to the growth-focused model, completing the entire transformation. The operational wins they are expecting from this rollout are just phenomenal. Just by being smarter about how their people work, BRAE anticipates higher MSME graduation rates, massively improved productivity for every hour Mantri works, a stronger loan portfolio, and a huge expansion in their actual developmental reach. And the best part? They do all of this without needing a massive spike in hiring. They pull it off by strategically letting existing ecosystem partners handle the lighter transactional lifting. And honestly, the economic justification here is staggering. Look at this. In just the year 1 pilot phase alone, the expected benefit-cost ratio is between 1.34x and 2.11x. But once this framework hits full operational maturity across the country, that ratio skyrockets to between 2.68x and 4.23x. It absolutely proves that you can get an unbelievable return on investment simply by optimizing your existing workflows and deploying your people smarter. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on. What BRI is doing here completely flips the traditional more money solves everything mindset on its head. They realized their biggest bottleneck wasn't cash, it was people. So how could other massive institutions, whether we're talking about global finance, healthcare, or even government, fundamentally optimize their most constrained human resources to drive impact instead of just defaulting to injecting more capital into a broken system? It's a powerful thought to take away. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I hope it gave you a really clear window into the future of MSME development.
We are Drive Consultant. Thank you.